Hi everybody, it's Miss Amanda here to say, may the 4th be with you. This week we have a holiday that is very dear to my heart. Many of you probably know it's Star Wars Day this week, May the 4th. So to celebrate and to have a little bit of fun, we're going to do a Star Wars draw along. Remember, a draw along is where you watch me do a step and then you try it and we go draw along with each other step by step until we have a complete drawing. So find something to draw with, find a piece of paper, it could be like on the back of an envelope, it doesn't matter, and follow along and let's have some fun celebrating Star Wars. Okay, so to make our BB8, we're gonna need a piece of paper, and that can be recycled paper, it can be paper in a sketchbook, whatever you have. I'm using a Sharpie, but you can use whatever marker that you have that is like a Sharpie, or if all you have is pencil, that's fine too. And then I'm also going to use some bowls to trace the circles for BB8's body. So if you have like a medium and a small bowl, that is best. If you don't have bowls that are quite the right size, then find a lid or something else that works, or you can just try your best to draw a circle. But circles can be hard, and we want our circles to be really neat so that we can make him look like a realistic sphere. I'm going to just use pencil for the first couple steps, and then I'm going to switch to Sharpie. You can do the whole thing in pencil and then go over it with Sharpie if you want. It's up to you. You should place your big bowl near the bottom. BB8 is made up of sort of these two like balls, one on top of the other, and the bigger one is like his body and the top one is his head. At least that's how I think of BB8. So the bigger bowl should go near the bottom of your page so that you have space to draw his head up here. When I trace, my hand that does not write is gonna hold the bowl in place. You can get someone's help with this step too if it's hard to do the drawing and the holding at the same time. I'm gonna go around multiple times with my pencil. Okay, next I want to use something that has a straight edge to put some lines in the middle of my circle. These are going to be guidelines. So you can use lots of things for a straight edge. If you have a ruler, that's great. If not, an envelope or a piece of mail works well. Right now, the closest thing I have is my mouse pad. I'm gonna use that as my straight edge, and I'm gonna put a line that's vertical down the middle of the circle as best I can to get it right in the middle. I want the two sides to be the same size. That looks pretty good. It's not perfect, but hey, my first try at drawing is never perfect. Okay, now I'm gonna do a horizontal line, same thing. I want it to be right down the middle of the circle. Okay, so now I have 1, 2, 3, 4 equal parts. In fractions, we call those quarters. The last thing I'm gonna do with pencil is I'm going to trace BB8's head. So I'm gonna take my smaller bowl and I want to overlap the top of this circle just a little bit. And I want to make sure it's in the middle. So I'm just gonna slide it down until it feels about right. Okay. I think that's good. I'm gonna trace this. Now that I'm done tracing with my pencil, I'm going to erase the part of the top circle that overlaps the bottom circle. And then I'm gonna switch to my marker, and with that Sharpie, I'm going to go over my circles that I did in pencil, moving carefully and slowly. I'm not going to close my bottom circle. I want it to be open, kind of like the neck of BB8. Then I'll take my straight edge and I'm gonna line it up just above that bottom circle, and I'm gonna draw a straight line that kind of cuts off the bottom of the little circle, and that's gonna be the bottom of BB8's head. Now I'll spend some time closing my shapes with different lines, following the curves of the circle. This is going to create sort of a little ledge that's underneath BB8's head. It's kind of like his neck. Then I'll extend the lines of the neck and just go over what's left of that top circle I did in pencil to create the dome of BB-8's head. Now that I have the basic shape of BB-8's body, I'm going to use different lines and shapes to add details to his head and different parts of his body. I might even use some small circular objects to help me trace shapes just like we did at the beginning, especially for BB-8's little eye. So I'm just looking at a picture of BB-8 and I'm adding little lines and circles and squares for all the little buttons and cameras that I see on BB-8's head when I look at my example picture. I might go back and add some more details to BB-8's head later, but for now I'm going to move on to his body, that big bottom sphere. And when I look at my reference picture, I see that BB-8 has these big orange rings on his body, and they have all sorts of like sections and buttons on them. So I'm going to start by sketching in 3 of those rings. I'll trace with my finger at first to get the idea of it and practice that shape. You'll notice that I don't see all of the rings. They're sort of cut off because of the curve of BB-8's body. So I'm only sketching in part of those rings. That's a little tricky. I might use dots to help me sort of see where they go. I can also use those 2 straight lines we made in pencil at the beginning, that vertical and horizontal line that are still in pencil. They can help me place my rings. I can see where the rings sort of land in those 4 sections to help me get them in the right spot. Now to make these 3 circles look like rings, I have to repeat those circles inside of themselves, getting smaller and smaller. So I'm just repeating the same shape inside of itself, and I'm going to do that 2 times so that it's like I have a target with 3 sections, 3 rings. Then I'll take a break from the body for a little bit and go back to BB-8's head. I'm just going to use different kinds of lines to add a few more details, an antenna, and some fun stuff like that. Now I'll start to add some details to those rings or targets that we put on BB-8's body. I'm using lots of different kinds of lines, a lot of straight, diagonal, horizontal, and vertical lines, but also some curved lines. And those are creating the little buttons and wires and sections of metal that make up BB-8's body. You'll notice that I'm repeating some lines in all 3 sets of rings because they're made up of the same parts. You might need to pause and see where I'm placing these details as we go. Now I'm going to add some curved contour lines that connect the different rings on BB-8's body. These contour lines are going to also help show that BB-8 is not a flat circle, but a 3D sphere. It's really important that I'm following the curve of the circle with these lines. So you'll notice that I'm practicing with my fingers at first to sort of practice that curve before I do it with my marker. And then I'll go back to adding some more details and lines to those rings. You don't have to put this many details on your BB-8, but you can follow along or pause to add them with me if you'd like. I noticed that BB-8 has sort of like a seam on his face that outlines that big circle, that eye in the middle of his face. So I'm going to make sure to add that detail, and I might add a few more lines and details as well. I'll also spend some time adding some shading to his neck area by making the lines on his neck thicker, and also by putting some vertical lines on top of horizontal lines so that it's kind of like a grid. Each time that I notice new details in my BB-8 example picture, I'm going back and I'm adding them, building up more and more lines and details as I go. Remember, you don't have to have this many details if you're feeling like you want to skip ahead to color. But if you do want to pay close attention to that picture and follow along with me, pausing now and then to make sure you've captured those details, that's just great. One of the main details I'll be adding right now are some little dots or circles that I think are screws holding together the panels of BB-8's body. At least that's how I see them. Going back to the head, I'll add some thickness to a few lines, and I will also color in a couple circles, including that big eye. I'm filling it in with black, leaving just a few little slices of white that I'm not coloring in because they're going to make the eye look shiny. Just a few more details and whew, we did it. Done. All right, so my line drawing is done, but I want to spend a little bit more time on this drawing. I'd like to maybe add some color and some shading and value. Shading can help you create a picture that looks more 3D. It can make the flat shape on your paper look like a 3D form. And since BB8 is a sphere, we could really use some shading to make that sphere look more 3D and round. A sphere is like a circle, but 3D. So the circle is the flat shape, a sphere is round like a ball, or like BB8. I'm gonna go ahead and erase any pencil lines that are still showing. I'm gonna use colored pencils. I'll begin by just adding color to the areas of BB8 that are orange. I'm starting with a very light orange pencil, and I'll transition to a darker or brighter orange when it's time to add shading and value to those areas. Now I'm going to take my dark orange and I'm going to start to think about value. So let's decide where our light is coming from. I'm going to draw a little arrow right here to help me remember that that's where my light's coming from. So if I think about where the light would hit BB8, this side of his head would be lit up quite bright, and this side of his body. The arrow's pointing towards this part of his body, but the head, I know that the head is a sphere on top of a sphere that just sort of bobbles. So probably that head is going to cast a little bit of a shadow on the body. So this area might not be quite as light. And then this side, the light is traveling over these 3D spheres. So the light probably can't quite get to these darkest areas. So the left and bottom sides are going to be my darkest areas, and then the right and upper areas are going to be my lightest sides. So take a look at how I use color pressure and changes in the colors I'm using to create that value and those shadows. You'll see that as I add this orange to this little ring on BB8, I put a lot more of that dark orange on the very left edge of the circle. And as I travel across that orange ring, I release the pressure with my pencil so that it just sort of fades across the ring and across BB8. If you look at that top left ring that I added the dark orange to and compare it to the ones that only have the light orange layer, you can see how much more three-dimensional it looks. It's really starting to make that sphere pop. I'm going to be doing that with the other rings of orange as well. Okay, so I finished adding the orange areas of my BB8, and I'm going to move on to add color to the rest of these spheres. Those areas are mainly just white, but because of my light source that I know is shining light over here and over here, not all of the spheres are going to appear white. There are going to be areas that have shadows. So to do that, I'm going to use mostly gray, maybe a little bit of black. And I'm going to start by adding that to these areas here because this is the darkest, right? If the sun's over here and this is the earth, it's daytime on this side of the planet and nighttime on this side of the planet, so there'd be a shadow over here. And same thing on this side of the head, and same thing for underneath the head. Remember, BB8's head is casting a little bit of shadow over the top of his body sphere. And that is the step that's really going to make this circle start to look like a 3D sphere, even though it's flat on our paper. As I add color I'm going to be following the curve of the sphere with my pencil. If I just add color all willy-nilly, scribbling, it's not going to create that 3D effect. But if I follow the curve of the shape with my pencil and my pencil marks, that is going to help make it look more spherical. Just like I did with some of the sections of metal on the orange areas, I might start my shadow over again just a little bit when I get to these contour lines. It's not going to be as big of a shadow as before, just a little bit to sort of show that this is a separate piece. All right, hopefully the force was with you on your mission to complete this BB8 drawing. If you followed all of a Jedi Master Miss Amanda's steps, then you should have a pretty awesome BB8 drawing. I can't wait to see them. Don't forget to share them with me on Artsonia if you're able to. If not, I'll see them later. Yeah, have a great week. May the force be with you.